Hello, hello, hello. Welcome again to the 9th World of Stoopzz podcast, where we talk about anything World of Warcraft related, anything inside World of Warcraft PvP, PvP in general, and even sometimes we talk about real life topics, how they can be related to your daily life as well as World of Warcraft. Now, usually we have an intro segment to the podcast, but today it is a longer podcast. In this podcast, I had the opportunity to speak with Asmongold, and after this experience, I would most certainly consider him, I guess, a friend. If he ever reached out and asked me something or needed my help with something, I would most certainly be there and listen to what he has to say. And I think this will clear up a lot of the confusion following the past couple weeks. So we're going to do things a little different this time, and we are just going to jump straight into the interview portion of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy this segment. I know I did. Now, for this episode, I did my best to work on the audio. I hate Discord. The audio always sounds so muffled. It's really hot in California right now. If you're not aware, there is a giant heat flash going all the way through California. It is like 103 degrees at 1 a.m. while I am recording this segment. So you might hear my window open. You might even hear some AC in the background for portions of the podcast, perhaps the first 5 minutes or so. It's very quiet, very subtle, but it was way too hot. I couldn't do it. I was sweating bullets. I had like a puddle underneath my butt, and even right now I'm sweating doing this portion of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy. I think you guys will find this to be highly entertaining, hopefully informative, and I hope it is enlightening for many of you guys out there. I hope everyone enjoys. All right, now we're jumping straight into the interview portion of the podcast, and I have a very special guest joining me today. I'm sure most of you did not expect this. Some of you know him as Zach. Many of you know him as Asmongold. Nonetheless, he is probably one of, if not the most popular World of Warcraft streamer currently on Twitch. And I have him joining me right now. Asmongold, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I've been on, basically, I've been streaming and doing this stuff for 12 hours so far today. So it's about to be 13. I'm feeling pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, I appreciate the time, and I'm doing well.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me. I know it's been a long day for you, and
Thanks for having me. I'm pretty sure that your guests are probably didn't expect this.
Yeah.
After our exchange, but I want to start off and say that, like, I mean, Stoopzz and I, like, we agree on 99% of things. Like, we are on the same page. We're on the same side. So I want everybody to understand that going into this 100%.
Yeah, I think that's important to touch on, and many people might not be aware that we did speak for, I don't know, almost close to 3 hours the other day. And I think the biggest takeaway from that conversation is that we want to look to talk about and you know, point to things that we do agree on versus things that we might not necessarily agree on. But I think that's better for the community as a whole. And after talking with you, I kind of came to the conclusion, which I kind of had a sense of before, but you do really care about this game. And, you know, stream persona aside, you are a really genuine person and I think a very kind person, very humble person. So I wanted to kind of gear today's conversation towards that. A lot of the times on this podcast, we'll talk about a lot of things, even real life stuff. So I'm really happy to be able to speak with you, and we will talk about PvP. But first, I want to dive into some things about you, yourself, your persona. And I know today you did an Allcraft episode, and I did catch some of it. I'm not a big fan of, obviously, of just, I think today's conversation was towards more of like spoilers going into the expansion. I'm like, I don't want to hear too much. I'm already trying to avoid all of this. And, but I did hear the conversation of your name, Asmongold, and how you got that and your intro. Usually I'll ask, you know, where did you get your name from? How did Asmongold start? Where did that name come from? Was it a random generator? Was it something that you came up with on your own? How old were you when you got it? But mainly, you know, where did that name originate from?
So it's actually not derivative or anything. It's not from anything. It's a name that I got whenever I was like 7 or 6 or 8 years old, something like that. I mean, and this has been like a 20-year thing. I've been going around calling myself Asmongold, and I don't really know like what came to me. And it was so long ago, obviously, it was like kind of a blur as to whether I got the name or one of the older kids in the neighborhood kind of almost assigned me the name whenever we were doing, like, we were pretending to be like, I don't know, like secret agents in the backyard or something. So, yeah, it's kind of a weird way of having the name, and probably a lot of people don't have that same, I guess, like reason. for having it, or at least they probably haven't had it as long as I have. But I've used Asmongold for pretty much my whole life, and the reason that it's kind of stuck is because I used to also use like Spartan and stuff like that because I used to be really into Halo. And it's like you go play in a game, like obviously that name's taken, right? But Asmongold was never taken. And that's why it just kind of stuck, is because it's the one thing that I could go with that would be consistent across all of my platforms. And with WoW, like it was just a name that just like it came to me and I just chose it.
That's an interesting story. My name originated from Stoop Kid from Hey Arnold, and I had Stoop Kid, and it was like Stoop Kid's afraid to leave his stoop. I don't know if that was on Nickelodeon.
I loved Hey Arnold, man.
Yeah,
that was an amazing show.
That was a blast. Yeah, and
yeah.
And the name just kind of originated over expansions. It changed, it altered, and then it's Stoops now, but from Stoop Kid. So everyone has a weird story, and I think it kind of is telling to who they are when they started the game. So I was just interested in that, and I guess following that, I want to transition into. You know, I think you talked about Warcraft, and you know obviously a lot about the lore when it comes to Warcraft, at least a lot more than I do. I know a little bit, but I'm not anywhere near on the same level as you when it comes to that. So I think you mentioned Warcraft 3, but how did you get into World of Warcraft? Who told you about it? Did you hear about it yourself first? I obviously have my own story, but I'm interested to hear yours.
Well, I'm not a huge. I mean, like I know a lot about the lore, but compared to somebody who actually knows a lot about the lore, I don't. But I have a general idea of what's going on, and I originally started playing Warcraft, literally sitting with my mom, 8 years old, Warcraft 2, Tides of Darkness. So I've seen this game evolve for a very, very long time. I played Warcraft 3. I loved Warcraft 3. And for a while, I moved over to just playing Halo and just focusing entirely on that. And in 2000, and I guess it was the school year of 2006, a kid in my computer class actually like kind of pressured me. The way that I got into WoW is very similar to the way that a lot of kids get into drugs. The kid kind of pressured me to buy the game, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I will. And he's like, oh, come on, like you really want to get this game. Like this game's really good. Trust me, you're gonna like it a lot. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I buy the game. I buy World of Warcraft, and I take it home. And I put it on my 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 bookshelf. I put it on my bookshelf for the entire year. And then a friend of mine, Zach or Mick Reevy, as he's known on Twitch and online, he came over because he's been a lifelong friend of mine. And he lived nearby, and he came over, and he went over to the bookshelf, and he saw this game, World of Warcraft. And he's like, yo, why are we not wasting our life on this game? And, that was 10 years ago, and we've been doing that ever since. So that's kind of what happened, is that he kind of got me into it. I bought the game, but I never really played it until then. And I remember, like, the only thing I really knew about it, like, I knew Warcraft 3 well, and I also knew that you had to pay $15 a month. And I remember, like, him and I trying to math it out, trying to, like, mow his grandma's lawn to get $15 to pay our sub fee and everything else. It was a really good time, and I've played ever since then.
It's really funny. You answered a couple of the questions, so you knocked them out that I was going to go towards after, but same here. I got it during vanilla. My friend told me to get it, pressured me into getting it, and I actually bought mine at Barnes & Noble. They were selling it there at the time. And I remember, and I think I've told this story before, I was the worst. I mean, I was crying and kicking my door like, I was being a total baby, begging my mom to pay that. Because she didn't understand, $15 a month? Like, what are you talking about, $15 a month? Like, you just bought the game, and that wasn't enough for her. And it took about, 24 hours of being locked in my room and crying. For her to actually, because I was like, 11 or something at the time.
You gotta get what you want, man. You gotta do whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Yeah, whatever it takes. So, that was my story there. And I remember playing it, and this is gonna go to my next question. I had the worst computer setup. I had the slowest e-machine computer ever. I didn't know what a video card was, and I was getting 12 FPS in the Baron. So I'm curious, when you got your game, you put it on the shelf. You finally install it, you start playing. What computer, if you can remember, were you using at the time? Was there like a old Dell? Was it a hand-me-down? Did you have a nice PC setup? Was it a laptop? What were you using to actually play World of Warcraft?
2004 HP computer pre-built at Sam's. And, yep. And I played that all the way until Wrath of the Lich King. I didn't know really what a graphics card was. I didn't really know. Well, I guess I did by then because I was in like computer class and everything. But I had gotten this computer a couple of years before, and I basically used it to post statuses on MySpace. And besides that, I didn't really do a whole lot with it. And Warcraft, like back then, it's like you didn't really know what 60 FPS was, so you weren't really mad that you didn't have it. You were like, oh, 12 FPS, woo, this is great, you know. And you don't really, it's like you can't really know what you're missing. And back then, like that was completely fine for me. And like looking back at my old raid raid videos and everything from like Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, I'm like, how did I ever play like this? But back then, I remember thinking, like, especially a couple of them, because I remember like my thought process, like, yeah, this is like really smooth or whatever. And I go back and it's just awful. But yeah, I was playing on a crappy old computer like that, and both my mouse and my keyboard were wireless. And I remember hitting my head with the keyboard until enough keys fell out that I couldn't play the game, crawling under my desk, picking up the keys, putting them back in the keyboard. It was like a therapeutic cycle. By the time I got all the keys back in the keyboard, I was calmed down. So it was certainly a different time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can relate. I had a horrible computer experience, but again, I didn't know. You know, my friend told me to press, what is it, Control R. He's like, what does that number say? And I'm like, 12, and I didn't even know what 12 FPS was. You know, I didn't understand that until I think it came till towards the middle of BC is when I started to realize, hey, I need to step up my. If I want to start doing PvP, I need to get a better computer, and then that's how I ended up, I think, doing so well at the time, especially, right? Because nobody had a good setup at the time, I feel. All right, I want to talk about...
everybody sucked back then.
Yeah, everyone had I mean, there's some people, I'm sure if you're older, you have more money. But again, I was 12, so I was using my lunch money. I want to talk about, you know, nostalgia, the idea of nostalgia. We don't have to get too in-depth. But for me, I can remember, you know, if I look back, and I think everybody has... You know, your parents will say, what's your first childhood memory? You're like, oh, I have to try for this one. For me, looking back at vanilla, I'll always remember, you know, the crossroads, hanging out in the crossroads in vanilla. I did ZG. You know, we glitched the raptor boss, and when I was trying to tank it, there was all these other moments. But if you ask me, steps. Yep, exactly, right, trying to glitch him, exactly. Yep. So I was around for that. But if you ask me, hey, Stoopzz, you know, what is a moment or a place in vanilla WoW that you remember and that you kind of hold fond? If you ask me, like, you know, what does World of Warcraft mean to you? Crossroads is that for me, and I'm wondering if you have a place, a moment, an experience similar to that you kind of carry in your head anytime someone asks you, you know, that question.
I would say for a zone, Red Ridge Mountains, just because it felt like that was the core of the game, right? You had the Alliance City, you had the Horde Castle, you had the monsters in the cave. It had everything that a quintessential World of Warcraft zone could have. It even had the monster in the lake, and it was just absolutely perfect. And I feel like Red Ridge Mountains has always been my favorite zone because of that. Now, my first memory, I don't really know what exactly my first memory would be because I had different characters, but one of my very, very fond memories was I remember I was going to buy a sword in Stormwind, and it was like a white level sword. And my friend Zach was playing with me at the same time, and he asked me to borrow some silver, and he was trying to buy the sword, but then I was trying to buy the sword before him, and I wouldn't give him the money because I wanted to buy it for myself. And we were like racing to buy the sword, and I was trying to outrun him to Stormwind to buy it. And it was just like all kinds of really, really, really dumb stuff like that. And that's what Vanilla WoW was all about, right? And I think that, I mean, a lot of it was nostalgia, and a lot of it was just pure fun.
I think that's something that me and you both agree on, is trying to make World of Warcraft fun, maybe even first and foremost over everything. Last time I spoke with you, we talked about, and this is something that I think at least people that are listening should be or might be really interested in. We talked about in our conversation the idea of PvP and what it meant to you, you know, towards the beginning of your WoW career. I guess you could say how that was, you know, maybe your main focus, and perhaps you wouldn't be where you are, or you wouldn't be as interested in WoW, or how you got your start was because of, you know, somewhat PvP. Can you talk about that again and explain to everyone listening why PvP, at least at that time, and still does, I'm sure you've talked about that, means so much to you?
Well, PvP has always been a lot to me, and I like the idea of MMO PvP, where you can work to build a character and then take that character into, a battleground and fight with that character. I like the idea of MMO PvP. In a different way than I like other things as well. I mean, I'm not saying like FPSs suck or anything like that, but MMO PvP is special to me in that way. And ironically, the reason I have a warrior is because of PvP. I queued a Warsong Gulch, and I queued into a gnome twink warrior. And of course, I got two shot, right? Because he's a twink warrior with a bunch of really good gear. Well, I didn't know anything about twinks. I thought that's just how warriors worked. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm playing the wrong class. And the next day, Asmongold was made. So I was really into PvP then, and getting up to level 60 and being at level 60, I remember knowing whenever AV weekend would happen better than I would know whenever I would have tests at school. Like, I cared so much about that. And I remember I would play AV weekend and AV all day, every day. And the reason for that was because back then, my parents were divorced. So I didn't really have time to make a raiding schedule because I was going over to my dad's house at some days during the week. And I couldn't really meet that requirement. And because of that, I couldn't really raid, and I had no other way to get gear. And I saw PvP as that alternate way to get gear, that thing that I could do on my own time, and it would take a lot of effort, a lot of time, but I could do it. And I remember the first time that I finally got up to like Knight or Knight Lieutenant, to where I could actually walk inside the Champions Hall. God, that felt so damn good. Oh my God. And I went in there and I bought some pieces of gear. I felt amazing. And I did PvP all through Vanilla WoW. I was mainly a PvPer, and I actually got into like my first serious raiding guild because of PvP. I was like one of the best known PvPers on the server, and it was a really bad PvP server. I wasn't that good. But they wanted to play with me, and I took that opportunity to make friends with them, and I got into that guild. And the reason that I'm raiding today is actually because of PvP. In Sunwell, Brutal Gladiator gear was actually very, very good for warriors, and it was better in a lot of cases than Tier 5. So whenever our arms warrior quit the game or wasn't able to show up, and they needed to do Brutalis, and they needed the arms warrior debuff, Asmongold was online, and I was the person that showed up. I was the person that did that. And it was a crazy experience, and like just getting in there and being part of a raid, and that happened because of PvP. And if it wasn't for that, if the system that we have now was in the game then, I wouldn't be the same person that I am now, because I had that opportunity to cross over and do that because of how good the PvP gear was in PvE. And it took a long time to make, and not really make, but earn. And I just, PvP matters a lot to me in that regard. And also, I've just always enjoyed it. It's something that, like, WoW, like, obviously, like, WoW is primarily a PvE game. You know, most of the content that they put out is PvE. But PvP has always been a part of the game, and it's been a part that a lot of people enjoy, including myself. I mean, if I look at my statistics, like, I've got easily over, like, 250k HKs. I've got that achievement. And, like, obviously, participation doesn't necessarily mean that I'm, like, really good at it or anything. And I'm not saying that I am. But what I am saying is that I've done it a lot, and I've enjoyed it in the process. And I think PvP has meant a lot to a lot of people. And that's why I'm more concerned, and that's why I think that both of us are concerned with the direction that they're taking it, especially in terms of removing those deterministic rewards and cutting off those bridges that you can build between PvE and PvP.
Yeah. And that's something that we're definitely going to get to in a little bit here. I just want to say, for everyone listening, again, what he touched on is you don't have to be extremely good at PvP to enjoy PvP, right? And that doesn't mean you can't have an opinion on it either. Obviously, if you're somebody that participates in PvP a lot, you might have more experience in that area. You might think, hey, this might be better for PvP. This might have a bigger impact on PvP. But I want that to be known that, again, you can still enjoy PvP and you can still have a say in PvP, especially, I can never say that word, if you are somebody who's been doing it for so long and you've been here throughout multiple expansions. And I find that when I talk to people, and this is not an elitist idea, it's just that there have been so many different expansions where PvP has done so well, and there were themes during those expansions that I think we're going to try and touch on here. I want to fast forward to today, and then we're going to go into some, I guess, personal questions in a way, and then the topic for this podcast. Fast forward to today, and your stream is killing it, more so than ever, right? Obviously there's times where you get spikes where your views are just going insane. New content is, announced, new content is available. You're there. People want to participate. They want to join you. And that is incredible, right? Especially now when there's a lull. Right now there's a lull in WoW, I guess you could say. There's new things on the horizon. We have BlizzCon and then this new patch that's going to drop. So that's not, going to be true throughout the entire expansion. But how did you get into streaming? Who got you into streaming? When did you want to start streaming? What gave you the idea to start streaming or making videos, right? I know the idea of YouTube might be a little bit more familiar to you at that time. You started making YouTube videos. What drove you to do that? And then did you ever think that those videos that you did, I'm sure you're going to say no, those videos that you made or those beginning early streams would lead you to where you're at today?
I don't really ever, I know it might sound weird, but I don't really ever think about where things are going to take me. I hope to just do as well as I possibly can. So if I do really well, that's what I was hoping for. If I don't do really well, I was hoping to do better, right? And I'm always a person that tries to, I try to do as well as I can in what I want to invest myself in. A lot of people might not know this, but I actually made YouTube videos back all the way since 2008. But I never really took them seriously until the very end of 2013. What happened is that I was planning on going to school, and this was happened in I think it was November or October or so. I was planning on going back to school, and some personal issues came up. My mom got sick, basically, and I wasn't really able to go back to school, and I started making my YouTube channel just because I needed something to keep myself from going insane. And the way that I always decided and figured out how to make videos or what to make videos about was really simple. I would just Google something like how to get the battered hilt, for example. That was one of the first ones I did. And I would look at the guides and be like, yeah, these suck. I can do better than this. And I would. And that's basically what I used to do, is I would just look things up and I would show people how to do things in the game. And that kind of evolved into then me doing kind of the, I guess, joke video guides, like how to transmog your character, how to be an elitist, how to get a girlfriend, and how to do big dick damage and maximum DPS on these bosses. I love doing that. But one story that I don't think I've ever actually told on one of these podcasts before is that the first time I actually streamed was in 2012 on Towley's stream. I've told this before on Twitch, but never on a video. So Towley was streaming himself doing Firelands, and people were really, really enjoying it. And I remember I was leading this raid, this Firelands run. It was a GDKP run, and I had set this all up. I had made even little pictures for promotion for it and everything. And I didn't know who Towley was. I didn't even really know what Twitch was at all. And it might have been in 2011, to be honest. And I go in there, and people keep coming into our vent server and trolling us and yelling at us and calling me stupid or whatever. And I didn't really know where it was all coming from. And then I found out it was coming from this guy, and I didn't even really know who he was. It's Towley. And then somebody linked me his Twitch page, and I saw that I was raiding in front of 2,000 people. And I was like, yo, I'm going to make this the best and funniest raid I can possibly do, right? And I think I did. I had an amazing time. And I remember Towley mentioned it, Big Dick Thursdays. Big Dick Thursdays. That's what it was, man. From 5 years ago, 6 years ago, he still remembered. People still remembered. And I feel so good about that. That was the first time that I ever streamed. And after that, I didn't do it at all. I stopped. And I did once or twice in Timeless Isle. And I didn't really get any viewers or anything because I didn't really care. But I was just like, yeah, this is a waste of time. Fuck it. And I went forward, and I started streaming a little bit more in late 2015, just very, very casually. I'd just get on and be like, yeah, what's up, guys? Whatever. And then in April of 2016, my dad went on vacation, and I just had all this extra time, and I was like, yo, I'm just going to stream every day. And that was over a year ago, and it's been going that way ever since. It's been a year and a half that I've been streaming full time. And before that, I streamed maybe like once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. Like there were months where I didn't stream at all. So I was just super, super casual about it. And then at that point, I just kind of focused entirely on streaming. I started enjoying it. I started doing it completely differently. And I really started having a good time. And that's basically what I've been doing ever since.
So going forward from 2015, you had that Tally incident, years before.
Yeah.
At what moment, you said there was a moment where you started having fun with it. Now, what moment did you sit back, in your chair, and you said, you know what, maybe I can do something with this? Obviously, you have viewers. You got. I mean, you didn't even get your subscriber button until recently. So was it at that moment where you're like, wow, look at all these subscribers I just got? And this isn't, again, for you to show off in front of everybody. It's just to be genuine in who you are. At what moment were you like, I can make this a living for right now? This can be something that I can support my mom with. You talk about your mom a lot, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But at what point were you like, hey, I can help my family. I can do things here. I can grow here. This can be a career for me. I'm good at speaking. I'm good at doing this, etc. At what point? Yeah, the truth.
Never.
Never. Okay.
I not even now. I don't even really think about it. The truth is I was completely self-sufficient with just my YouTube money, and everything that I got from streaming was just straight on top of that. And I know a lot of times people don't really like to talk about money, and I don't like to get into specific numbers or anything, but I was not doing well, but I was doing fine with just the YouTube money. And streaming was just more on the top, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, streaming was doing really well, and I felt really like I'm more than being greedy. I'm an attention whore. Okay, and I felt like I could get a lot farther on Twitch than I could on YouTube, because I felt like YouTube content was so hinged on the actual game that I was playing, the actual thing that I was doing, that I couldn't actually just come out and be myself. And I didn't feel like I could ever get to 1 million views a video streaming, making WoW videos, right? Maybe I could get 1 or 2 up there, and maybe I've gotten pretty close. But in terms of doing that as a regular thing, I didn't really think I could do it. But with Twitch, I thought I could get a lot farther with just streaming WoW, because that's what I really enjoy doing. I like other games, I do, but WoW has always been like my main game, and it's always been what I focus on. It's what I know best, and it's what I enjoy. And I think that's why, I focus a lot on Twitch, and I try to do that, is because I genuinely enjoy it. I enjoy making the raids, creating the community. I've always enjoyed the idea of community and guild building and all of that stuff. And so being able to do that on another level with Twitch was really fulfilling for me, and it is still now. Now, whenever it turns like making a living and like making money or anything like that and subscribers, the only difference between me now and like me whenever I was trying to borrow money, still live with my mother, and I live in I don't do anything that's really extravagant. I'm just a normal guy, and no matter how many viewers I have or how few viewers I have, I'm always going to be the same person. And I try to treat everybody the same. I try not to really tier people out or treat people less or more because they have more or less viewers than me. And I try to actually just be like a real person. And I think that's something that gaming and especially online content creation is really missing nowadays. And that's something that I really try to emphasize and to be myself. If you want to be the change, you have to be the change. And that's something that I really want to work towards. And building the community on Twitch, building that stuff, it means a lot to me on a very, very, like on a meta level, I guess. So that's one of the big reasons why I enjoy it. And obviously there are like minor things that are advantages to stream and, be able to make a living at it and everything, especially if you do well. Of course, those are great. But at the end of the day, like what everybody needs to realize is that I'm just another guy playing a game. Like I'm not anything more. I'm just a guy. And I think that gaming, content creators especially probably need to have a little bit more humility in that regard.
It's actually interesting that you talk about this. I remember starting my channel And I've talked about this with you privately, then I've also talked about this just publicly, so I don't have to go over why I started or, you know, how or whatever. But when I did start, I remember there was another couple of channels, because I'm always looking at who's doing what and what are they creating and what ideas do I like that they're doing and how can I improve on them, similar to how you would Google or YouTube how to, etc. And then you'd see, I can do better than that. I remember seeing a podcast, and this was right when I started my first podcast. It was like my first episode ever. I just wanted to do it. I love to talk. It's like my favorite thing to do. Probably why I make videos. And
it's a good reason.
Yeah. And I saw this channel, and I don't want to butcher her name, so I'm sorry if I do, but I believe it's Velia, and I'm hoping she's still making content. It was a resto shaman, and she had this podcast called Raid Rant, and I think she had a couple episodes. And the very first one, mind you, at the time, she had 1,300 subscribers. The very first one, you were featured in it. And I'm like, what the hell? Asmongold in her very first episode. I remember I was at school. I was still graduating from college, and I'm like looking at my phone. I'm like, huh? I couldn't believe it. Not just for the fact that she's a channel that I'm looking at, like, hey, I want to see what I can do that she's doing. And then the fact that I see you on there, I thought it was incredible. And I was happy to see that. And you know, just going off what you said, being humble and trying to support other content creators and staying genuine, level-headed. I think that's a perfect example, not one that you mentioned, but one that I remember, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought, like, whenever she approached me with the you know, the plan for like what the podcast was, I saw a lot of the questions and a lot of the things that she wanted to talk about, and I thought they were really insightful, and just it was something that I really wanted to say, and I felt that would be a great platform to do it. And it turns out that that video got a ton of attention, and you know, even on Reddit, I remember it got on there. It was on the front page of the WoW Reddit. And I was really glad that I was able to help her. And I see her doing substantially better now. And I think that's has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the fact that she put a lot of effort into her channel. And it's something that I always care about, is that I want to see people that I like and that I support succeed. And you know, I feel really good whenever somebody that I like or I think is going to do well does well. And it makes me feel, it's like everybody wants to feel like they're picking a winner, you know? And that's kind of how it is. And I had no problem doing that with her because I thought it would be a great show. And I think it really was. And that it didn't matter like how many viewers or anything that she got normally, because I knew that the content that she was putting out would attract viewers. And I think it's more than subscriber numbers, it's the content itself. There are people that have 500,000 subscribers that get less than 10,000 views a video, right? If you put out compelling content, people are going to watch it. And I think that she was a very good example of that, and she has been since now as well. So I have no problem helping people, and even if they don't have a huge subscriber base, as long as I feel like what they're doing is quality content.
I agree, and I think that's why, again, I wanted to do this with you. I mean, I've talked about this with you privately, and I'm not just saying all of this, and I know there's going to be a lot of people listening right now, but I'm not going to be not myself, and I'm not going to be, excuse my language, but an asshole. Like, I made those videos. A lot of it was for entertainment. A lot of it was just for show. A lot of it's just for internet value. But I'm not going to... I believe that's who you are, and I couldn't believe that you did that at the time. That was evidence for me enough. And then you willing to do this with me, and then just... I know a lot of people aren't going to like that I'm saying all this, but I want to be real and transparent, and I don't want it to be a front. Again, a lot of that was just for show, and I do want to talk about these things because you do have a lot of swing in our community, and that is why I brought you up originally in those videos, is I want to see what's best for our community, and I don't want it to go in a certain direction. But once I spoke with you, and you know, in that video, it was apparent that we agree on a lot of the same things. So if we're on board together, then I'm not going to push you, you know, over the edge and just say, well, no.
Here's the thing, man, is that I have more in common with you than I have with nearly anybody else in the entire world. Just because you think one thing in PvP is more important than I think it is, doesn't change that. You and I have a lot in common. We have almost all of the same goals. And what I try to do is, instead of focusing on differences, I focus on similarities, and I work together with people. And I don't, of course, I said rude things to you. You might have said rude things to me. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, a lot of my very good friends I have now, I actually originally became friends with them because we were enemies in like high school and middle school and stuff. And that's not a big deal to me. I don't really hold grudges. I don't really care. I really don't. And ultimately, I know that you know, like, well, so what if you disagree about something? So what if somebody calls you dumb or whatever? Is this really going to make me angry? No, it's not at all. And I'm glad to know that you're in a lot of ways the same as I am, because a lot of people nowadays, you know, you say something bad about them, and this is like an ongoing, you know, feud forever. But I'm not really into the drama. I'm not into the feuds. I'm not into doing that kind of stuff. I'm into ultimately working towards my goals. And I feel like we're ultimately working towards the same goal. And one of the worst things that you can do is divide people in whenever they're all in the same team. Why would you do that? Like, there are many things I'm sure that we disagree on, but that doesn't mean that we need to focus on those. Why focus on the 1% whenever you can focus on the 99?
And that's why in today's discussion, I don't want to solo on certain things that we would potentially disagree on. I want to talk about the things that we do agree on. And I think that's most important. And you really did sell me on that when I was talking to you. You know, you brought that exact idea of why should we divide, you know, our community or our team? And I don't want to do that at all. And I've, you know, on my live streams and in my videos, most of the people that watch those previous 2 videos wouldn't get the sense of me in those videos compared to, I don't know, the other hundreds of videos that I've done. But I think it's just interesting to note that. And one thing that you did mention to me, and something that was really personal to me when talking with you, and I had no idea of this, and we don't have to get too in depth, but you know, I had a similar background to you. My mom got really sick right when I was in college, like really bad, to the point where I didn't know what I was doing. It was so hard for me. My dad just passed away after they got a divorce. So it was extremely hard for me. I mean, I was a complete mess, and I don't want to dive into any of those health issues with your mom or any of that, but I do want to talk about just the moment. I mean, I know you live with her now, and I just want to talk about the moment when you had that first month, right? You got all those subscribers, and just by talking to you, I know you're not thinking of it. It's not on your mind, but it's hard for me to imagine that you don't walk down there and say, hey mom, I have this many subscribers, and you just like either give her a hug or you laugh or you giggle, you share a moment. Can you talk about if there was a moment, or maybe she wasn't interested and that's just how moms are, but I'm just curious, was there something there? Were you excited to share that with her as her son? And was that meaningful to you following her getting ill and all of those things happening?
Well, for quite a while, streaming has sustained me much above what my needs were. And I basically just save all of the money. Obviously, I told her, you know, like, oh, you know, like, I think that, like, at the end of the first month, I had like almost, I had like 7,000 sub points, and I had like 6 point something thousand subscribers. And I told her that, and she was really proud of me. And my mom has supported me in making YouTube videos and making content ever since I began doing it. So I really think that, like, I owe that to her, to tell her how well I'm doing, and to let her know that her faith was not misplaced. And my dad, you know, my dad, he was skeptical until I got a check. That's basically the way that I feel about it. And I completely respect that. I mean, you know, my dad wants me to be able to take care of myself, be my own man, everything like that. Hey, I mean, I totally get it. I don't have any sort of animosity towards him at all. And he was just looking out for what was best for me. So I don't have any sort of complaints there. But yeah, I mean, of course I told her, but I don't really, like, as I said, I'm not like, oh, mom, we're going to go buy a new car, or we're going to go buy anything like this. I'm like, mom, do you want to go to Taco Bell? I'll get you, you know, like whatever you want on the menu, you know, or whatever, you know, if you want to get something else, or if you want to order something, you know, that's maybe a little bit too expensive off of Amazon, I'll be like, yeah, sure, go ahead. You know, it's not a big deal to me, and it's something that it's a privilege to be able to do. and I don't ever forget that. And of course, it's an amazing thing to be able to do. Before I went to, I did YouTube. I was going to university to. I already have a college degree, but I was getting a second college degree, more advanced one in computer information systems, and I was going to go to law school after that. So I hopefully had a decent looking job coming out of that as well. But before that, we were very, very poor for basically the majority of my life. So the situation that we're in right now is vastly better than what we were in, and hopefully we'll stay there. And but I don't really. I know it might be weird, but I just don't ever really think about it because like my day-to-day life hasn't really changed a whole lot. I'm doing basically the same stuff. The only thing that I really can do is I don't really have to worry about, do you want to get large? Yeah, sure. Like that's it. You want to get a frosty too? Yeah, sure, whatever. Like that's the only good thing about it to me. I'm not I'm not an extravagant person. I don't like to spend money to spend money. I don't like to brag about anything, and I very rarely do. And honestly, like my dad always brings it up to like his friends. He's like, oh, Zach's doing really well, and he's doing this, and I always tell him like, just relax, okay, relax. And I think a lot of people are more into it than I am in a lot of ways.
I think, well, I mean, maybe even me, but I find the story so interesting, and I find just the success of it all so interesting. And again, I actually like the fact that you don't think about it. I think that makes you more interesting to me, or just as a person to talk to, and just as a human being. And then again, I just already can feel it. I can hear it in my ear, Stoopzz, like, what the hell, man, or da-da-da-da, like, you said all these things, and it's just that I'm more of a human person. Like, I'm a human being, and
well, the way you act on camera is different than real life. I mean, what people need to remember, like, this is something that you don't really like say a lot, and a lot of people won't say, look, guys, I mean, like, you're making videos, you're to a capacity acting, right? This is not really like the way that you act on camera is not really the way that you act off camera. I don't know anybody. I've met many people that stream, and I've never met somebody who acts entirely the same on camera as they do off camera. The truth is that most of these people that stream are not these raging assholes or terrible people or anything like that. They're just normal people trying to get by, and they do what they enjoy, right? And sometimes it's fun to just go on and just act crazy and do that kind of stuff. And I can understand why people would be like, yeah, this is terrible, or it's fake, or whatever. But ultimately, whenever you go and you talk to your grandma, it's going to be different than whenever you go out to like a party with your friends. You're going to act different around different people. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to realize. And it's also something that's not bad. It's good to be able to be different in different situations. It can show, a gradient of a personality. You're not just some one-dimensional robot that can always be predicted. You're a real person, and you have to remember that.
Yeah, I think that's lost in a lot of these videos, is that I am this person, or you are this, or you're so mean, or you're so nice, or you're so friendly. It's no, I have multiple parts of me, and I have multiple personalities, and in certain situations and with certain people, I'm going to act differently. And right when I started talking to you, it was clear to me that we were going to have a certain type of conversation, not during this podcast, but prior. And then from there, I'm like, okay, I can relate so much to him. He's being really nice with me. I'm not going to do something all the time for views and to be like that. So that's just not me as a person. And that's why I asked you all these questions, is because I want other people to also acknowledge that and understand that. Not that you need it, but I think it's important for anyone listening. I guarantee you, if you have at least a heart, or you can relate, they'll have a lot more respect for you as a person, and even perhaps me, who knows. Going into the, now in these questions, I'm going to go through these fast because I know we're limited on time and I don't want to hold you up. I have some PvP questions and topics.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you them. Your thoughts. Most of these, I mean, almost all of them that I've written down, we agree on, so there won't be too much time for dispute. I'll give you kind of my thoughts
I
and everything.
Mind debating at all.
No, right. I mean,
I don't mind that at all.
You said that prior as well, so
yeah, debate is that's the beauty of debate, is that debate is effectively natural selection for ideas. That's where good ideas live and bad ideas die.
So for the sake of this, I did also write down what other people would say in response to
Sure.
what I think
I have no problem responding.
what I think your answers would be. So we have PvE versus PvP spillover. How can we improve that? Do we want that as a community, and why?
Well, it really depends on who you're talking to. And I think that I can make the argument from the perspective of the 1% or the 99 or 95 or 5 or whatever. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that PvP and PvE spillover is something that the majority of players that are very casual and enjoy the game as a whole probably appreciate. It's nice to be able to go in and get your new cool PvE gear and take it into a battleground and kill people. It's also really cool to be able to have PvP gear and use it in raids. It makes it matter a little bit more, but from the same perspective, it is kind of difficult for players to really take it seriously and play at the highest level of either one if for some reason you have to get, like, let's say a 2400 reward item from PvP, or let's say we're back in Cataclysm and you have to have a legendary in order to be completely competitive in rated battlegrounds, like Terragos or Cunning of the Cruel.
Yeah.
Right. And you do have that, but ultimately, what's the best thing for the game? What is the best? What will get people playing the game? What will get people engaged with the game? What will get people enjoying the game? I think that the system that we had in Cataclysm and Wrath of the Lich King was much more successful, not only based on the participation numbers, but also based on the investment that players had in their characters. Now, obviously, every system is going to have positives and negatives, and I'm not going to say that the Cataclysm and Wrath of the Lich King and, like before then systems were perfect, because they were not. But I think they were closer to perfect than what we had now, and the imperfections that they had were ones that I would rather deal with than the imperfections that we have now.
Fair. And I think just from a PvP perspective, I think everyone should understand that World of Warcraft is a complete package. Well, was or should be a complete package, as in it involves and you participate and do multiple things within the game. If you look at it, and I think this really comes from the PvP perspective, if you look at it from just strictly PvP and that's all you do, I'm not surprised that you are unhappy, because it's less than half the game right now, and it's a very small portion of it currently. So you do want, in order to get your money's worth, in order to feel involved, in order to feel invested, ideally you participate and do everything. And I think that's the issue, is because we don't have that spillover, which leads to a lot of boredom, which leads to a lot of complaining and just feeling misunderstood or not having your desires met. So I think that's really important. That's why I really want to see PvE and PvP spillover. I don't want the extreme level for both ways. I don't want it to feel like the only reason you do PvP is to try and get 2400. I want it to be worth it for you at a 1600, 1700, 1800, 3v3, 2v2 RBG level.
Well, the rewards just need to be better. I mean, that's what it comes down to. The rewards need to be better. Like, if you compare, like, imagine if they added like an 8-piece set to PvP right now that you could actually go out and buy, and it was like, let's say item level 925, and like right now that's pretty good. And maybe you could upgrade it to like 930 or something if you were high enough rating, like an elite set for 2200. People would farm the shit out of that. People would do that all day and all night. The reason why PvP was so successful in really everything before, and I would say Mists of Pandaria was successful too, but it had a lot of faults that I don't really want to get into too much. But whenever you saw people doing, everybody did Arena in Burning Crusade. Everybody did Arena in Burning Crusade. And the reason was because it had compelling rewards. Compelling rewards are the key. Of course, there are going to be people that play it just to play it. That's great. They are the 5%. But if you want to get the other 95% on board, you have to create compelling rewards, and people will have fun getting them. And I think it'll be positive overall. I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm saying, as an example, if they added very compelling rewards to PvP right now, you would see a spike in participation overnight. That doesn't mean that PvP would be better, right? But it would get more people doing it. That's how important rewards are.
I think this should be touched on from both a cosmetic effect as well as like a gearing incentive effect too, because I want to see also people that already have their full set of gear And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I don't want to say any names, so I'll just say that I've talked to some people, and they say, well, they don't want to do that because in WoD or towards the end of WoD, people would just do PvP to get their starter gear to hop into PvE. And Blizzard doesn't like that, apparently. I don't know if they do. How do you know if they don't? Personally, I love the idea. I don't care if you're hopping in or dipping your toes in to get your gear and then you're going to leave. That's fine. It means more people are trying it and getting their set. I don't mind that from a lower level perspective as well, or a lower rating perspective as well. I don't mind that. But if you also add in cosmetic rewards, maybe really cool enchants, remastered enchants, like a purple mongoose. I'm just throwing out ideas. I have no idea. Then maybe it's the guy, Joe, on Tuesday, who goes to raid every Tuesday or every Wednesday, comes in as a sweet enchant, and everyone's like, where'd you get that enchant? Oh, I got it from getting 1800 in threes. Damn, maybe I should try that. I think gearing's important, but adding simple enchants as well. How much effort does that take? I don't want to debate that because I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that.
It depends on the player, right? I mean, like some people, it's very easy to get 2400. Most people, it's not. That's the real problem, is that now a lot of the PvP rewards, you don't really get anything until you get up to 2K rating. Like there's nothing that you get for being, and you do get that really cool elite set, and that is awesome. I love the idea of the elite sets. But then after that, you don't really get anything until 2200, which is the tabard, 2300 the cloak, 2400 the enchant, which has been in the game since like the beginning of the expansion, and a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's the same one, and that's fine. It's fine to have the same one, but I like the way that they have the high-end rewards set up, and that's why a lot of high-end PvPers, I think a lot of high-end PvPers don't really hate it all that much in terms of like the high-end stuff, and it might be hard for people like that to understand entirely people's concerns that are 1700, 1600, 1500. And I think that one of the problems is that whenever we have these discussions, we're talking to people who are very engaged with WoW PvP. I mean, they're engaged with it enough to watch a podcast for it on YouTube. They care. We are the 1%. That we need to do things for people who are not the 1%. And that's one of the big problems that PvP has had, is that they've been making changes for the 1%. They've been making changes to make very, very high-end players happy, I think, and also make very low-end players happy with like stat templates so they don't just get one shot in Battlegrounds. But they're leaving out that middle 80% of players that want to have that sense of satisfaction, that want to have that gear progression, they want to have that meaning, they want to have that permanence, they want to have that success. And that's something that's not present right now in Legion. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that Ian, whenever they asked if they could make Prestige account-wide, he said, we can't do that. And his reason was basically because if they did that, there would be no rewards from PvP. I mean, Prestige is a great system. I love the Prestige system, but that's basically the only thing that I like about Legion PvP.
The interesting part is, and I have some responses here, and this kind of leads into another question, so it's going to be a big open discussion here. A lot of common responses, and I think these are perfect because you phrased it perfectly. The 1% responses, right? They should do it because they like it. They should participate in PvP because they like it. Just get good at the game. If you want those enchants, mounts, and not those lame titles, those being Duelist, I don't even know the other ones, Challenger, Rival, just get good at the game. Again, that's just catering to the 1%. Or the idea that you only want to get gear because you want to steamroll everybody. You only want to get gear.
Yeah, of course. Exactly.
And I hear this when I'm debating this. But when I'm debating this, it's like, oh, you're bad. You just get good at the game. You shouldn't need gear to be. I'm like, okay, I'm speaking. It's hard for people to understand that I'm not speaking for what I want. I don't need that. Like for me, it doesn't. I'm cool with whatever. I'm doing it because I like it. I'm the 1%. But I want these changes for everybody else. I think they're best for the majority of players and people that are even listening. Like you said, most of them are still the 1% because they're doing it because they like it. They're still doing it. Some of them do like the idea of gear mattering again. But with all that being said, and of course these comments like get good are just to me a little crude, I guess you would say. why
They're
do not? Why do?
short-sighted.
I'm sorry.
They're very short-sighted.
Yeah, exactly. It's
The player base, Gladiator is based on the top 0.5% of players. So if you have everybody who's really good, there's still only going to be the same amount of people that are getting Gladiator. The problem is not that people aren't good enough or they don't want to improve. The player base has vastly improved since Vanilla WoW or Burning Crusade. If you don't believe that, go back and watch a PvP video from back then and look at the people saying, wow, this guy is so good. And you can just look and he's dog shit, right? He's clicking his abilities. This was what passed for good. Players have improved, but also you can't really make the game just for the 1%, just for people that like playing it for the sake of playing it. If you took all of the gear out of raids, people wouldn't do them. And this is a problem. I know a lot of your audience is PvP, so they probably haven't really experienced this themselves as much as I have. But from a mainly PvEer's perspective, Mythic Tomb of Sargeras is very unrewarding, and it's had very little participation in it. And one of the big reasons for that is that the rewards from Mythic Tomb of Sargeras are not very compelling. It's not that people want to raid for the fun of it or anything like that. Of course, they want to have fun raiding, but at the same time, if you're not really getting anything out of it, and other people are getting things better than you are from like Heroic or something, you start to ask yourself why you're spending, 4 hours a week, 3 nights a week, 4 hours a day or whatever, 3 nights a week, doing this over and over. And you kind of lose sight of what really your goal is. Obviously, people play for fun, but there has to be something more than fun. People play MMOs because they enjoy character progression. If people didn't care about character progression and they just like the gameplay and they just wanted to play a completely balanced PvP game, they would play something like Counter-Strike or something like Dota or something like that. And I understand those games are not perfectly balanced, but you don't have to worry about leveling up. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. WoW is not one of those games. And I think that Blizzard is making a mistake by trying to cater it in that direction.
I think you're on the topic here about balancing, and you're talking about, incentives, and in a way to balance the game, they implemented these stat templates. Now, yes. I don't like them. I think they should be removed from the game. You don't either.
I think they should be removed immediately.
Can you? Because when I say this, right? Because when I talk about this, I think the number one thing, I had this video and everyone loved this video, and but there were some comments. I agree with everything that you're saying, other than removing stat templates. It only makes the game fair. Now, again, in my argument,
people don't play the game to be fair. They play the game to get a great sword, go into battleground, and 3-shot nubs. That's what it's been. It's been the whole time since 2006. Why did you raid BWL? What did you do whenever you got Ashkandi? You took it into a battleground. You killed nubs. That's what people enjoyed. Everybody got that experience too. It's not like, oh, only people that were really serious got that experience. Everybody got that point where they got that new weapon. They got that new item. They got something that took them to the next level, and they were able to see that influence their character's power. Now, you get a 955 trinket, 955 relic. What does that do? Give you 0.5, 0.1 more stats on your template. It means nothing. It changes nothing. If your character is underpowered, you feel like you're weaker compared to, like, as a warrior, I feel like I'm kind of weak compared to Frost DKs.
Well,
I feel like they do a lot more damage. Yeah, I feel like they do a lot more damage than me. What am I going to do? Am I going to get a mastery spec? I can't. Stat templates. Am I going to do haste? Stat templates. Like, I use different gear entirely, try to use raid gear instead, a different setup like I did in Lich King or Wrath of the Lich King. No, I just sit there and I fucking take it. It takes agency away from players. It takes power away from players. And ultimately, I don't think that you should base the decisions that you're making in WoW off of the decisions that were made in other games, because they're a completely different paradigm. Of course, people want to go in there and get really good gear and stomp each other. That's an MMO. That's fundamentally what it was built on. And that's what motivated people to play for a very long time. And back whenever that was the system, the game was more popular for PvP.
I agree with everything that you just said, and I also want to touch on this right here and let everyone know it's almost like politics. Like, I can say this spiel, hey, everything's going to be balanced. We're going to do these stat templates so everything's even. But it's not really what it is. It sounds like a great idea, But I would argue it's even more unbalanced because now it puts all the pressure on Blizzard to have to make these stat templates, adjust them weekly, and everything's always out of whack. One week this class is really good, and then now you're not viable.
It's like all classes are equal, but Death Knights are just a little bit more equal than the other ones.
They control that, and that's the problem. And I think people think that they sound great. Like, I understand it sounds great. You know, putting aside the idea that that's not what MMO PvP is about. You want to get something, you want to earn it, it helps you in PvP. But putting that aside, if you're going to argue that stat templates and having them makes the game more balanced, it does. And I also want to say, it doesn't, if you have trouble sticking on a target, if you still backpedal, I understand, and I made that joke, but if there are things that if you're still doing fundamentally wrong, you're still not going to do as much damage as I am. You're still not going to be as effective as I am on your class if you're doing things fundamentally wrong. So the stats don't make things more equal. I could have less stats than you and it doesn't matter. And I'm not using me as an example. Anybody who is, you know, plays a certain class or has a certain experience in the game, a level of experience, I think that's super important to know. And I want everyone to understand that when we're talking about these stat templates and PvP stat templates, not one, is it not fun? And that's most important. But number two, it doesn't help with balancing. It sounds great, but I really don't believe it does. And I hope they get rid of them. You can let me know in the comments below why you think they're more important. Again, I want to go through these. I have a couple more, and I'll let you go.
Well,
so
most people, if I can build on that, most people back then were all using the same gear anyway. It's not like people were just using a bunch of crazy different items. Like at the end of WoD, everybody was using the same fucking pieces. Like the problem really is that it removes the sense of progression, and it does make it a little bit easier to balance for Blizzard. But if it's that easy to balance, it seems kind of odd that certain classes do seem really, really strong. It's like Feral Druids at the beginning of the season. What was that thing, like Brutal Bash or whatever? Brutal Slash.
Yeah. Unreal.
How does that even make it into the game in the first place? Like, why do they have these stat templates if Brutal Slash is just completely deleting people? Obviously, it sounds good, but it's actually not happening in the first place. And I don't really know entirely. Like, I personally think it should just go back to like the like Cataclysm level or like Burning Crusade level of PvP. That's what I would prefer them to do. And I don't really think there would be anything wrong with that. Most people at the very, very high end were all using the same gear anyway. So I think that for the 1% people that like the stat templates, you effectively had that before then anyway, because everybody was using the same items.
I think that people are upset about the outliers, like certain OP trinkets, which, you know, tame those down or just figure out how they work in PvP. I think it's weird to just say, well, we're not going to make any gear count because those few trinkets or those few items are extremely overpowered in PvP. I think something should be. I think if somebody's willing to spend that much time, it should matter. I know from a competitive standpoint, and this isn't a popular opinion, it might be, this is unfair, but if he spent that, for me, if he spent hours and hours getting it, that's what made MMOs fun. When you saw somebody with dual Warglaves or Rogue, you'd be like, damn, like this is about to be a lot of damage I'm going to take. It was just the excitement factor of it, and I miss the fun of that, but I understand the complaints there. I don't know how they're going to fix it. I'm not sure. You could just revert things. I think we've talked about that it's not too late to revert everything because it's only been one expansion and people have fallen off in terms of PvP, and I think a lot of people would be excited to see them revert some of these things. With that, we have Arena, and you've talked about this. I've heard you talk about this. Anytime there's an all-craft or PvP is involved, I'm always listening. So I've heard you talk about this in the past, and it was, and I agree, the problem with Arena as an esports model in terms of just telegraphing things, understanding what's going on, I can vouch just being there live and just knowing that nobody knows what's going on except a handful of people, but they're just cheering because Sidhu's on stage or there's health bars moving all over the place, and they like that. But what's wrong with Arena as a model, and why would 6v6 RBGs be a better viewing experience for the average Twitch viewer, the person there watching it live, somebody at home, participants, casters? Why would 6v6 RBGs be a better esports model than Arena?
Well, I think that RBGs would be better as like the core like WoW PvP I guess like mode, because Arena is very hard for spectators to follow. If my dad can understand me playing PUBG, and he's never seen me play that game once before. He can see what's going on screen. If I'm playing Counter-Strike, he can understand that better than him understanding me playing WoW, and he's watched me play that game for 10 years. If you don't know what's happening, if you're not a serious player in PvP, you're not going to understand it at all. It's like you can see people cheering when a rep paladin is getting low health, and he has the auto bubble talent. Like, he's just going to auto bubble whenever he's about to die anyway. So it's just, it's examples like that where Arena doesn't really, trying to think of the best way to say this. Arena doesn't telegraph very well for a spectator. Deathmatch is relatively boring. The majority of the map, the majority of like the match is very, it's not very, I guess, like enjoyable to watch. Like as an example, interrupts. There's no way for a spectator to know if an interrupt goes off without the casters telling them or without some form of visual aid. That is a fundamental problem because interrupts are super, super important. Diminishing returns, players don't really understand that very well on a spectator level. Battlegrounds, and I would also compare this, you have a lot of people that do random battlegrounds right now. Everybody knows how to play Warsong Gulch. Everybody knows how to do Arathi Basin, Eye of the Storm, Battlefield Gilneas, etc. In the same way, people all know how to do Maw of Souls, Halls of Valor, all of the different dungeons. Look how successful the Mythic Plus Invitational was. If you have people that are able to identify with the players, they're able to identify with what's going on, they're going to enjoy it a lot more because they can put themselves in the player's shoes. And I think that's something that 6v6 RPGs can do a lot better than Arena. I think that almost all esports now are not based on deathmatch unless you're talking about like a fighting game like Smash Brothers or Street Fighter. You know, and that's not what WoW is. You know, it's a competitive, you know, MMO. And I think that they should broaden the scope of that and not just have it be about 6v6, or sorry, not be about Arena.
Right. And I think yeah. Everybody understand, you just said it's hard, number one, and even the casters barely talk about interrupts as much as they do defensive cooldowns because you can track that. And it's also funny when you mentioned the auto bubble. It's like they're cheering. They don't know he's going to get an auto bubble. And then the people that are cheering, maybe they know they're about to get auto bubble, and that's a huge defensive cooldown. So you don't even know if they're cheering for the fact that they're about to burn a huge defensive or they think he's actually going to die. So it's really interesting there. And I also want to touch on, it's a lot easier to, as a viewer, a caster, to
track a flag going back and forth.
Yeah, track a flag,
you can
res timers, resources.
Like
everything. There's so many things that they can put their attention on, and you still get, like, I know there's a lot of, I love Arena. I don't want to see it go away, but you still get the aspects of 3v3, 1v1s, and it does help a lot of the class balancing thing because it's not all about the objective. I mean, it's not all about the damage you're doing. Yes, it matters, but it's about the objective. So certain classes are better at aiding objectives. You're going to see a lot more class variety, and I think that does help the overall game and will fix a lot of the issues when it comes to, well, you're a Fury Warrior, sorry, I just want arms, bro. And I think that will help a lot of those issues. Yeah, you can play
Fury in RPGs. Yeah, I mean, like 90% of the time you probably shouldn't, but the 10% you can, you can. And I don't know. I think that there are a lot of things that RPGs have as a pretty big advantage over arenas. And I think the main thing is that they're a better viewing experience. And I think that if you're putting something out as a tournament, you have to look at what's the best viewing experience. And if WoW PvP wants to be successful, if you want to compete in WoW PvP, you want to see it do as well as possible, put it in front of as many people as possible, and you're going to see that success. You can almost bet for sure that Blizzard is going to spend a lot more time in the future developing and making Mythic Plus dungeons better in a way that they're probably not working on with Battlegrounds, because Mythic Plus dungeons are in a lot of ways more profitable and just a bigger investment for them because of what they get out of it. They give more advertising. So what I'd really like to see is Blizzard focus more on 6v6 RPGs. 10v10 is something that I would kind of prefer, but the logistics of that make it impossible, personally. I think that, like, basically, like, to be completely blunt, paying 10 people wouldn't work, right? So even if I would like 10v10, I don't think that it would work. Would they have to maybe shrink some of the maps? Probably, yeah. But that's something that they could do. And I think that
They
if
did
they,
some of that as well, right? They in the
uh,
in the BG event that they had, they did a 6v6 BG event. They shrunk down Warsong a little bit. They shrunk down Silver Shard Mines or whatever, I believe that's what it's called, with the carts, and they made it so less. So they've done work into that, and I think that'd be exciting in itself. Hey, there's new battlegrounds. They've shrunk down the maps. 6v6 is a thing, and I love the idea of, just from a spectator standpoint, I think people would enjoy that. You did say something here, and I'm just trying to get you on your own time. I want to be respectful in that. And you led to this conversation, so it's perfect. It's a great transition. The idea of BGs, people doing more BGs, BGs being the entry-level PvP experience for most people, and maybe the only thing that they do when it comes to PvP. And you talked about this with me, and I really loved this idea, but then I thought about it as well. And so I'm just going to ask you here. You talked about having hidden MMR for BGs. And I love that idea, right? I absolutely love that idea for both me and somebody who doesn't want to get steamrolled. And maybe they could add extra incentives to that. I don't know how that would work. That sounds amazing. I would love to see them work on that for the next expansion, just allowing that, because every game, I don't want to make that comparison. We talked about that, like every other game, because they're different games, but most games have some kind of, when you're doing some kind of matchmaking system or a quick match, they're not going to just throw everybody together. And I would love to know that everyone I'm playing against is this experience based on maybe how many BGs you win. That might entice more people to do BGs. Maybe they increase the PvP rewards for BGs. So I absolutely love that idea. Even if they include that gear will actually start to matter in Battlegrounds, that's even better. Like, now I got gear, I have a hidden MMR. It would make it so much more fun. It would also allow people to not get completely dumped on, I guess, even though we want people to poon noobs and all that kind of stuff.
Well, there's going to be positives and negatives to things like that all the time. Like and that's kind of like what we were talking about with like the whole, like, what would a solo queue look like in WoW? And I think if we were going to see anything, the first step towards that would be a separate battleground bracket with a hidden MMR, right? That would try to match you with people of equal skill. And maybe if you got a certain number of wins or a certain amount of that hidden rating, you could buy certain pieces, right? That would be really, really cool. I would love to see something like that. And I'm not even like a huge person that's against that. It's not like I hate solo queue or anything like that. And that's kind of like what you're saying, is that like the idea of queuing into something that is at some level skill based or skill determined, like who you're playing with is based on how good you are or how many wins you've had, etc. I think Battlegrounds would be a very good place for them to start with that. And it could just be as simple as adding a separate queue button. And you just queue with a hidden MMR, and you just play and play and play. And maybe it would make a better experience, maybe it would make a worse experience. But it's something that I hope that maybe they could try out with maybe with the brawls. I think that with a lot of the PvP brawls, they've used those as kind of testing grounds for different PvP modes to see how players would react to them. And I would really like to see them do that more, and maybe do some sort of hidden MMR bracket. And if that worked really well, if people had better experiences in those battlegrounds, maybe expand that. I also like the idea of being able to queue in with anybody, right? It's like, it was really cool queuing into like an AV and seeing people in full tier 3 whenever I was level 52, right? And I kind of like that, just being lumped in with everybody. So there are kind of positives and negatives to each one, but I would like to see some level of, I guess, like rated PvP that would be easier to get into. And I think that one of the other problems that we have is that, as like I said, like a lot of people might not have really done this a lot, but whenever you make a group in Group Finder, you have to, you can require a certain item level. So you can require like 900 item level. So if you have players that are trying to queue into that, they won't even see that group if they're not 900 item level. And I would really love to see that be moved into PvP as well. Because right now, if you go into the PvP group finder, everybody's a 2700 gladiator. because people can link fake achievements, etc. But if they had a way for players to ask for certain ratings, and like what they have with PvE is that if you're not 920 item level, you can't ask for people that are 920 item level. So you can only ask for the item level that you have or lower. And I would like to see that with PvP. So like if you're a 2200 player, you can ask for people that are only 2200 or higher, and that would prevent you from having to play with people who are linking fake achievements. Of course, you're still going to get people who buy carries or self-plays or whatever. I mean, no system is perfect, right? But I don't really know why they don't have some sort of rating requirement cutoff that would allow different tiers of players to more easily find partners. And I think that would be a step in the right direction regardless, because even if they did implement some form of solo queue, they would still have a constructed queue system that was probably separate from that too. And I'd really like to see that, because it would make it a lot easier for PvPers to find partners. I'd also like to, yeah.
Go for it. No, you can go for it. I'm sorry.
I'd also like to see an area that, I mean, I don't like stat templates, but just as an example, that have stat templates to where players can duel each other and PvPers can congregate. I always remember the days of going outside Ironforge and dueling with people. And then in Cataclysm, it was outside Stormwind. I mean, we still see people dueling outside Orgrimmar now, but for Alliance, there's really not a lot of places to go out and do that. And it's kind of sad. I like to do that, like go out and duel people. And yeah, world PvP is completely broken and balanced, and that's a problem in itself. But the idea of being able to go out there and duel people and be in the presence of other PvPers and not just be queuing from the city all day, I think that's fulfilling for people, because a lot of people play MMOs. A lot of people were initially drawn to this game because they like having that community experience, and especially people who have been playing it for as long as we have.
I think it's very similar. This conversation is brought up a lot within our community. You know, we should just do a dueling Coliseum. I personally want them to bring back where you have to queue at a queue master where everyone congregates. I just want that. I know it sounds very primitive. I just like being at the same area. If they don't do that, that's fine, whatever. At least bring back Duratar. Some people have talked about, and I think it's a good idea, but my fear is that it does separate people even more. Make war games a lot easier, where you can just challenge one person. People can spectate the war games, and it's just a place where you guys can duel inside the arena. A lot easier than typing /WG, their battle tag, and sometimes it doesn't even work. You have to be on the same server. It's confusing. Just make it an actual option where you just challenge them into a war game. You spectate it, that's great, but I just feel like if you could just bring back the dueling area, I miss going in front of Duratar and Stormwind. I don't know what's better, but I think like a lot of these things that we're talking about, the BGs, the hidden MMR BGs, which by the way, you know, you even mentioned it, it sounds a lot like solo queue for Battlegrounds. I mean, it sounds almost the same thing. It's a separate backup, it's a solo queue system. So I think it's important when we're talking about all of this, I think it's important when we're talking about all of this to understand that this is really complex stuff. Like, nobody knows the exact solution to anything. And I told you this personally, I just think any idea, I don't want it, and that's why I'm laying off it in that way. I don't want solo queue in that idea, because we just talked about it for Battlegrounds, and it sounds pretty cool. I also like the idea of just having regular Battlegrounds. I don't want the idea of solo queue to be anywhere near the level of Nostalrius, or just like that weird, like, oh, like, we have to do this, and it becomes like, the idea of it just becomes like, just like frowned upon. I don't want that. And I don't want it to be like that, because I want to move past the conversation of, hey, is this a horrible idea or is this a great idea? It could be good, so how would we implement it for PvP? So how could hidden MMR BGs be good? Something like that. I just want to move into a positive conversation. Whether it's implemented or not, I just don't want it to be frowned upon. And that's why I brought up that question and all the things that we talked about. I believe they're good. Some of the things maybe I don't want to see implemented, or vice versa between me and him or anybody listening, but I just think it's important to understand that nobody knows the answer. But the most important thing that we can do is have a healthy conversation about these changes, how they can be implemented. If they were to be implemented, what's the best route of doing them? You know, there's so many things that need to be changed, and that's why I do understand where some people are coming from, including Asmongold or Zach himself, that there's so many things wrong with PvP. Whether we agree, like, what is the top 5? I just want to end on that. Like, what really is the top 5? Can there be more? It's such a silly thing, though. You know, like
The top five, like I'm not really sure what the top five are because it depends on what priorities you have. I think that stat templates are a really big problem. I think that the fact that PvPers aren't really able to easily find partners is a problem. Is the solution to that solo queue? And I think that's really the issue. Like you can look at problems or solutions, top five things that you'd want to see happen, or top five things that you think are wrong with PvP. I'd like to remove stat templates. I'd like to bring PvP gear back to the game. I think that there's too much CC in the game. I think this is probably...
I had that written down.
I think this is one of those things where a lot of people might disagree with me. And I'm not really speaking from my own perspective. I think that as a warrior, yeah, it can be really annoying. But in rated PvP, it's fine. I think that in unrated PvP, there's a lot of incidental CC. And that's something that I think is kind of annoying for players. You have things like Chaos Nova, Shockwave, things that just kind of that incapacitate your character without really that person even trying to do it. They just do it. Like Remorseless Winter Stun, a PvP talent. There's a lot of things like that. And I don't really think that fundamentally it's fun for people to not be able to play their character. And I'm not saying that they should remove all CC. I'm just saying that I think they need to tone it down a lot. And I think that would be more rewarding and more compelling for players. I think it's more rewarding for a player to be able to beat somebody and out damage and destroy their team through damage than be able to line up a CC chain that worked very well. And that comes from more of a fulfillment perspective, not necessarily a perspective of skill. Because being skilled at the game is important, but having fun at it is even more important.
I think saying that too, I just want to clarify again, when he's talking about CEC, we are talking about things like Chaos Nova, Remorseless Winter,
I'm not
not
talking
things
about
like
Polymorph.
Yeah, Polymorph, because it is a little absurd. I do like CC chains. I do like skill involved. As a healer, I hate pure damage. I can't stand where it's just damage, because then it favors the melee, and it really controls the range classes that do rely on CC and control, right? It makes them not as effective. When it's all about damage, you're gonna get a lot more melee classes because that's all they're good. They're just staying connected and they're doing the most damage. There's no line of sight. Being able to stay connected is not really an issue in Legion, as most classes are for the most part. I mean, if you're a warrior and you're getting cut, I've seen it. It looks miserable. You're just like crawling at somebody the whole time. I can relate. But I wanted to clarify that he did say incidental. And that's what we mean. We don't mean polymorph, fear, things like that you need for control. But just like when you run in there, you dash in, it's on 1 minute cooldown, you press one button, it stuns 5 people around you. It's a little busted. That's like an ultimate you would relate to League of Legends or, I don't know, Heroes of the Storm. You wait minutes for that cooldown, and that's all it does. And it ends the game. Very similar to WoW. If you stack on a Demon Hunter, it's game over. And a lot of classes don't have massive AoE stuns on a 1 minute cooldown. That's really easy to use, by the way. If it took a lot of skill to do, but just pressing one button is, I think, too easy.
You could only use it whenever you had darkness up or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That'd be great. Yeah. Or just you'd have to do something beforehand, but just on demand, just I'm gonna press 4 and it's gonna stun everybody around you. I think that's a problem.
Well, it's just a little bit too much. And I think that also from an arena perspective, I don't really think it's as bad. But from even an RBG perspective, I don't think it's as bad. What I'm really saying this for is for just casual play. And I think that if we make the game fun for casual players, the viewership, the community, the ecosystem of PvP will come back. And I'm purely speaking from just an average player perspective. I'm not speaking from, an arena, like a high-end arena perspective. I really can't in a way, but also that's not really what I think they should focus on. I just don't think it's fundamentally fun for somebody to run in, get stunned, and get killed, right? It's not, and obviously they can do things to prevent that, but it's a little bit too much right now.
It's not fun. It's not fun in general, man. It's not fun in casual play, and it's also not fun in arena. It's new types of CC that has not always been there. You have things like Fear Bomb for a warrior, which at the time, remember when people were doing that, it was borderline super annoying. And then now you have a stun. It's not fun for anybody. It's too easy to use, and those things can easily be refined with patches. So when we talk about CC, and that's why I brought up the top 5. I just think when I was saying that, it's like, okay, can it be the top 8? Why is it a number? What does top 5 even mean? What changes can be done in simple patches? Like things like Chaos Nova can easily be changed with a simple hotfix. I mean, they've nerfed Fist of Fury multiple times throughout an expansion, so things like that can be changed. I just don't want people to get stuck on what is your top 5 or that's not as important. I just think that the best thing we can do as a community is to find things that we all can agree on, all want to see change, and advocate for those rather than tear down other ideas or point to somebody, well, he doesn't agree with this idea, and it goes back to the idea of being right versus what's best for World of Warcraft as a whole, and that's what I'm trying to get across. I could talk about all of this all day. I could hold you. I've held you longer than you were supposed to be here. Maybe we can do this again. I hope everybody has a better sense of who Zach is as a person, how that differs from his stream persona as Asmongold. We agree on a lot of things. I think I agree with him maybe on some things that a lot of my PvP community or friends would not agree on. Again, I'm trying to agree on things which I think will have a better impact on the community as a whole and not personally what I like. Things that I've talked about are not things that are going to impact me or that I care about personally. I just think this is what's going to be best for our community. And, you know, I think what's most important is that me, him, anybody listening, anybody out there, rather than just attacking other people, which it sounds ironic from that video, but it's what I honestly believe as a person. If we can come together on something, I'm much more for that than anything else, and I think he is as well. I want to thank you for taking the time to even speak with me, and I want to thank you for coming on here and talking for as long as you did. It was really interesting. I think my favorite portion was just hearing about you as a person. I've talked with you about this PvP stuff all day, but they haven't heard this side, so that's why I brought it up. You can find him. I'm sure you don't need to know, but you can find him at twitch.tv/Asmongold. You can also find him on Twitter at Asmongold, and you can ironically find him at YouTube, if I'm getting this correctly, Virtual
Asmongold?
Exchange.
Asmongold works too. I have the custom URL. I'm good.
So, what is Virtual Exchange? What is that? I'm just curious.
I originally wanted to make a website with a friend of mine, and it just didn't happen. So I ended up just taking it and going with it for the YouTube channel.
Regardless, all this will be included in the description below. Again, you probably don't need to know any of this. You know it already, but if you were interested, it's in the description below. Again, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to speak with me. I enjoyed it. I appreciate the conversation. It was great hearing about you and just talking with you. I really do enjoy it. And anything you'd like to say before I let you go?
Well, I did too, and I had a really great time talking about it. I care a lot about PvP, and I want to see it do as well as possible. Ultimately, it's something that I really enjoy. Ultimately, I just want what's best for the game, and Stoopzz and I agree on pretty much everything. We want pretty much the same things to happen, and I think that the best way for us to do that is to put our voices together and put them in the same direction, saying the same thing at Blizzard, and I think that's the best way. And if we can do that, that we can be that change. But unless everybody gets together and doesn't worry about fighting or getting mad at each other or picking each other apart over minute details, that's not going to happen. So I think that's basically the path to success. That's the path to progress.
Well, there he was. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. There is Asmongold Zach. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Sorry about the cricket that was in my room for the first 10 minutes. I had to, I guess, dispose of him after locating his home underneath my bed. So moving forward into BlizzCon, I hope that some of these changes that we talked about here today are implemented. Let me know your thoughts on what you would like to see in the comment section below. If you guys like this podcast or this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any more questions regarding my theories, Asmongold's theories, you can leave them in the comment section below. Do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.